14 again. Just it kind of occurred to me the other day that it will be 100 years since World War I. I believe that won't be till a little bit later in the year, but what's I mean, have we come full circle that 100 years after World War I, we're going to enter World War III? Is that possible? Well, you've got like the Japanese Prime Minister, sorry, well, it's bug, I guess, talking about how China and Japan are very similar. Not that he's making threats, although I pretty much know what the sentiments of these people are. They're psychopathic. They're just complete. You know, only an idiot would get themselves into a shooting war in this day and age, unless it was a desired effect. That's it. Which for Japan, I don't believe it's a desired effect, but there's other powers that be that would probably benefit greatly off a war between China and Japan. Not just one person, but probably, you know, quite a few of the so-called elites. Sorry, I got one more thing. Multitasking here. So, what did the Davos, basically the other Bilderberger, it was Davos that where this meeting took place of like world elites, and they discussed economic stuff, and the Japanese Prime Minister pretty much came out and said, look, we're kind of, you know, in the same conditions as World War I, you know, what led to World War I with Germany and, you know, Russia, and stuff like that, and then, of course, against everybody else. And what's ended up happening is that the dispute over the islands is very, very similar. And it's kind of one of those things that if it flares up the right way, we could have an all-out war. Now, the thing is, this is probably why you're hearing things from Chinese officials, you know, I think at the same, the guest list is kept hush-hush. We don't know who said it. All we know, these are influential people around the world, lots of money, lots of power to make change, so to speak. And we have a Chinese official that was saying that, look, we could have a limited war with Japan. I don't know how you'll limit World War III. You know, like, what do they mean by limits? These are very sound questions. What's going on here? And sure enough, you know, you have one side of the fence talking about, well, we're in the same conditions, so, well, it's probably going to happen anyway. And then you have the other side saying, well, we could probably just have a limited war. You know, to me, that just tells me, yeah, we're going to war. That's the kind of mentality and all the other rhetoric that you're seeing. And that's just one spot in the globe. I mean, there's so many other spots that are flared up right now. The only thing is these guys have the potential to go nuclear. Now, Japan apparently is trying to get nukes, but it's backed by nuclear powers that will bail it out, i.e. the United States. So, this is the way the elites are viewing the world, is basically, we're going to go to war over something. We don't know what the incident is yet, but we're brewing it up that way. It's whether it's a resource war or a flash in the pan incident. I'm more likely thinking a flash in the pan incident where things are just going to, between either ships or airplanes, whether it's fighter airplanes, or it's going to be some sort of incident like that leads us into the war. Kind of like what led us into World War I, and kind of like what got us into the World War II, and what kind of got us into, well, not so much Canada, but the United States into Vietnam. So when we look at it like that, there was always an incident that was kind of like the point of no return. We have to do this now because we have to save face or something stupid like that. The only thing I think that really warrants a full war is an all-out invasion. You know, well, how did they get the Americans into World War II? Pearl Harbor, right? If Pearl Harbor wouldn't happen, they wouldn't have jumped in. Now, it has come out that, Pearl Harbor, they knew the attack was coming. They wanted the attack to happen so that they could justify getting into the war. What I'm thinking, well, if you're going to go to that kind of length, okay, why kill the innocent civilians and just go to war? You just go to war. Say, look, well, we just don't like them. Just go to war. At least do it honestly. At least dictators and tyrants don't hide their motives. You know what I mean? they at least you know what you're going to get with them. But this kind of let's sneak our way into it. I mean, and it's been like that all the time. Same in Korea. I mean, the same thing. That nearly led to a few nuclear exchanges itself, and it was just kind of one of those things. Who were we fighting in the North Korea? We were fighting the Chinese. A lot of people don't realize we already fought them. So you can see how things just kind of come full circle, because the game still gets played the same way. And I think it takes a much braver man to get us away from war than to get us into a war. It only takes a marginally competent idiot to get us into war, but it takes a brilliant man to get us out of war, or avoid war. So I think if we understand what war is really about, well, it's about two things. It's about suicidal and genocidal. First off, if you're shooting at somebody, you're being genocidal. If you're being shot at, it's kind of a bit of a suicide mission now, isn't it? Most wars do end up in pretty much suicide missions. Think about it logically. You're taking a projectile of sorts, a multitude, high probability of hits, and firing it at the other guy, and he's doing the same to you, on behalf of the collective of people who are too coward to fight themselves. Hence why I got a solution to this problem when the elites want to go to war. You have basically UFC elites, basically fight to the death. If the president of China and the president, or the dictator of China and the president of Japan, probably like a dictator anyway, want to go to war, just let those two guys fight. Winner takes all. Settle it on two men. There's no need to bring in millions. You know what I mean? And all the people like World War I, all the people that fought in World War I, World War II. Now, most of them didn't know what's going on, because it was easier for the government to manipulate back then. For sure, not so easy now, because now you can expose things a lot easier. But the thing is that even with that, most of the guys that fought in World War I, World War II, they did it for the right reasons. They believed in the cause. They believed they were stopping tyranny and all that. Even on the German side, I mean, they were fighting for the homeland, you know what I mean? So, I mean, not all of them were SS, you know what I mean? So, a lot of them were just fighting to, for their families, and they were fighting on behalf of madmen who were too coward to fight themselves, which is typical of the elites. They never get their hands dirty, so when you're looking at it like that, it's like, okay, well, where do we need to focus our attention? Well, we need to focus our attention is making these elites accountable. And how do you make them accountable? Put them in with a fight. Richard the Lionheart, was very respected, because although he was a very high noble, he fought alongside his men. People would have followed him to hell. Well, I guess technically they did, like if you think of what they went through. Alexander the Great could have beat the Persians at one point in a huge battle, but rather than pursuing a Persian king, I guess he was a king, or ruler, whatever you want to refer to him as, he decided, no, he says, I'm not going to abandon my men. So he turned back, helped save his men. He ended up winning later on. But, think about Alexander the Great, the riddle of the knot that couldn't be untied. Couldn't be undone. Now, he thought about it. Nobody had been successful at undoing this knot. And then he thought, well, it says undo the knot, it doesn't say untie the knot. Ding, with his sword, he wins. Ancient riddles. I love riddles and stuff like that. And when you look at it like that, it's like, okay, people like that, people look up to, because at the end of the day, they're actually standing beside you. They're actually doing it. But there's not a single politician today that's doing anything with any sort of genuine motive. They're all doing it, because, I don't want to tick off my other elites, or maybe we'll get some financial gain here or there. Again, this is why I say communists, or like a lot of places. It was, one guy brought up the other day. I guess yesterday he was saying, he says, fascism and communism aren't the same thing. That's true. They are distinct, different ideologies, and I 100% agree with that. And I often refer to Canada here as socialist fascist, yes, with a hint of democracy. Basically what they do is they kind of custom tailor. They can't go full out. For example, in the States, they're heading towards communism. Basically the 10 pillars of communism. you're going to, which will lead to Marxism and stuff like that. Basically, they're basically going to, they're basically taxing you off your land as we speak, to try to, only the elites can have the best, because things just, it's the $2 here, the $4 there in taxes that nobody sees, that ends up thousands and thousands of dollars extra at the end of the year. And that's how they tax you off your land. It's very cleverly done. But what you have to look at is, they can't just outright say, okay, well, you can no longer have a private land. You have to move to the city. They can't push you there, Marxism. They'd be such a revolt. So they have to use, for example, fascism to prop up the banks and the big businesses and corporations who they want, and everybody else can't compete with that. They basically regulate you out of business. Then once they have you completely regulated out of business, addicted or dependent on the system, then they could introduce full communism. It's the same way, Latimer Land did it in Russia and stuff like that. Basically, control the food supply. If people are poor and you control the food supply, you control. You don't need to fight them. You just starve them out, and that's, a lot of what goes on in the world. So they can't go full-blown communism. Okay, and most people. It's harder for the elites now because there are people that work in the know that are not as easy to take the hook, line, and sinker because there's too many people in the know. Where back in the day, most like World War I, World War II, there was really only a handful of people who really knew what was going on and how to bring it about. They didn't tell everybody. It was very compartmentalized. Plus, there was no way for people to really blow the whistle. Even if they did, what are they going to do? Stand on a soapbox? Okay, you've reached 30 people. Those 30 people will never get out of that town. You know what I mean? So they were able to clamp down on it. Now it's impossible for them to clamp down on it because not only can you expose their plans so easily through the internet, but you can do this all over the world. And that's what most of these revolts are about. See, there are some people in the higher-ups that were saying that we should have had World War III by now. The problem is the World War III really got hijacked by protesters. Yeah, but so they're like, okay, well, if we can't get right into a shooting war, people are protesting because the idea was to create enough devastation on people that they would demand a war, if the incident was big enough. But instead, they just turned on the elites. So like, okay, well, how do we get this crisis to work for us? Again, no good crisis goes to waste. Communism 101, so to speak, right from Chicago. And the bottom line is this, is that the people, they're not so, they're leery of government. Everybody's scared of their government. It doesn't matter what country you're in. Nobody trusts them. Nobody, they don't look at this as something that can be, people fear the government. I mean, the NSA, now you got your blissful idiots out there that think the NSA is nothing to worry about. Well, if you're doing nothing wrong, yeah, because, and this is a point somebody else made, and I couldn't have said it better. This was on a Young Turks thing. Somebody was talking about, the NSA and this, that's not that bad or whatever kind of mentality. They're just being paranoid. You can't compare this guy to that guy, like Hitler to Obama and stuff, which you can. Hitler wasn't a madman overnight. He didn't accomplish what he accomplished overnight. It took him a couple of years. And again, if you look at Obama's path versus Hitler's path, he's pretty much, he's accomplished way more because of the technology, but in what they've accomplished, they've got police state, they're armed up, they're ready to take on the people. So the only difference now is the wars are being fought internally. It's like, we're just, we're not going to get world government through obedience. People are not going to go along with the idea of getting into a war. Pretty much no matter what incident we throw at them, they're not going to give up their guns, even if no matter what incident happens. Use Sandy Hook as an example. Regardless of what you believe about the Sandy Hook thing, which they tore down the school. They didn't tear down Columbine. It's very clear that, to me, like, there's a lot of things that just don't add up there. I investigated it for months, trying to prove the official stories, and there was just so many. But which one, the first one or the sixth one? And that's the official stories. So yeah, something happened there. I do believe people were killed, but it's incidents like that that's supposed to get you to demand the problem, reaction, solution. Problem is people are not falling for that Hegelian dialect anymore. They're too angry, they're too riled up. So it's like, okay, well, they have to take it to the next step, and that is going to be some sort of a war. And out of that, you'll have tens of thousands of people step forward to go and slaughter and murder, and in the name of defending their nation, against people who are willing to defend their nation, slaughter and murder to defend their nation. Meanwhile, the people that really propagate all this stuff, they're not going to go after the individuals that, do the bad. They're going to, get, farm boy from this country and farm boy from that country to shoot at each other. And that's what they did in World War I, that's what they did in World War II, that's what they did in just about everywhere. And again, you don't believe me? Okay, 9/11, there we go. Okay, let's say hypothetically, the 5th time they killed bin Laden, it was the official one, and we buried him at sea and there's no evidence just because we wanted to, the biggest terrorist in the world we wanted to respect his religious rights, so it wouldn't offend the Muslim world. Yeah, okay, so I'm pretty sure probably most Muslims would be okay with the getting rid of bin Laden simply due to the fact of the amount of people that died in his name. Point? Well, 1.2 million Iraqis dead. Think about it, 1.2 million, that's a large, large number. Yes, Obama is a genocidal maniac. Make no mistakes about it. Because of the actions of a handful of guys, couldn't be prosecuted because they crashed their airplane into, they didn't go after the terrorist cells, they went after a country. And people were on board with that. So think about it, that's how easy it is to get into a war. Is to manipulate the people to want it, or to justify it in some way, shape, or form. Very, very terrifying. Hence, basically, war is basically nothing more than a suicide mission of genocide. Yeah, a suicidal genocide mission. That's what war is, a suicidal genocide mission. All right, so we'll have to see what the elites have planned. We'll have to hopefully spread messages like this so that we don't get into that kind of thing, especially 100 years after World War I. Enough bloodshed. Now, there is a way out of this. It's kind of simple. We put the elites on trial. And, yeah, that'll take care of 99% of the disputes. Think about it. Japan and China, it's the governments that are disputing each other. Even if the people are at grievance, most people don't want war. So think about that. Again, 100 people, one person wants to go to war. Okay, out of that 99 that might want peace, you're going to war. You don't believe me? Rack. All right, rate, subscribe, share, comment, like, there we go. Okay, hi and welcome. Is it 1914 again? Just kind of occurred to me the other day that it will be 100 years since World War I. I believe that won't be till a little bit later in the year, but I mean, have we come full circle that 100 years after World War I, we're going to enter World War III? Is that possible? Well, you've got like the Japanese Prime Minister, sorry, well, a bug, I guess, talking about how China and Japan are very similar. Not that he's making threats, although I pretty much know what the sentiments of these people are. They're psychopathic. They're just complete. Only an idiot would get themselves into a shooting war this day and age, unless it was a desired effect. That's it. Which for Japan, I don't believe it's a desired effect, but there's other powers that be that would probably benefit greatly off a war between China and Japan. Not just one person, but probably, quite a few of the so-called elites. Sorry, I got to do one more thing. Multitasking here. So, what did the Davos, basically the other Bilderberger, it was Davos where this meeting took place of like world elites, and they discussed economic stuff. And the Japanese Prime Minister pretty much came out and said, look, we're kind of, in the same conditions as World War I. What led to World War I with Germany and, Russia. And stuff like that. And then, of course, against everybody else. And what's ended up happening is that the dispute over the islands is very, very similar. And it's kind of one of those things that if it flares up the right way, we could have an all-out war. Now, the thing is, this is probably why you're hearing things from Chinese officials. I think at the same, the guest list is kept hush-hush. We don't know who said it. All we know, these are influential people around the world, lots of money, lots of power to make change, so to speak. And we have a Chinese official that was saying that, look, we could have a limited war with Japan. I don't know how you'll limit World War III.